Hello, Earthlings. To follow up with my intro on this uh, playlist I'm doing right now, uh, I'm going to start out with basically childhood trauma. So if you have issues listening to that, maybe not listen to this one. Um, but it does start at a young age. Um, this is weird. Okay, so from the beginning, my mom was very neglectful. I didn't realize it at the time, I guess. Uh, but grandma's house was always, the safe place. And I didn't realize why I'd rather be at my grandma's than at mom's. But then I realized it was because grandma was actually present and would, acknowledge us and talk to us and stuff. And then later on in years, I found out, talking through my dad and stuff, he would go and visit us after the divorce because they divorced when I was 4 years old. So, very young age. That I was having to do every other weekend see dad. Well, when dad would come and see us, we lived with our grandma for a while because my mom wouldn't keep a job. And so my dad said, yeah, he would come and see us and you talk to grandma and go like, where's, my mom at? But he would say her actual name. I'm not going to put names in this, just say whatever. But my grandma would tell him, was like, oh, I don't know, she's always just off doing whatever. Because, even when they were married, she was always off. As soon as he would get home from work, she would, basically hand us off to him and then, take off and go do whatever the hell she wanted, basically. So, from a young age, I was very neglected. I also was, and this is, the oddest thing to say out loud and to people. I have kind of told people some, but in reality, I was okay. So the doctor apparently told my mom I was supposed to be a boy, and so she was super excited about having a boy because she's always wanted a boy. And for some reason, I don't know how they I mean, this was in '89, so maybe their ultrasounds weren't as great as I'm sure they were not as great as they are now. But he really thought that I basically had a penis and I was a boy. But whenever I came out, haha, all of a sudden that penis was gone and I was a girl. Um, and my mom made sure I knew that, which is the oddest thing to tell a child, even at a young age. Once I kind of understood boy, girl, whatever nonsense. If I had known what non-binary was back then, I probably would have been it also. And that's why representation matters, because being a confused little kid and not seeing that, of course, I was also raised to think being gay was wrong. So, I already had that factor in. And I think my mom made sure she talked about it because I mean, when I came out to my mom, she flat out told me, I knew when you were 12. So I was like, wow, cool, thanks. But anyways, she would tell me that you were supposed to be a boy. Uh, why couldn't you have been a boy? Basically, is what she was saying. And I remember throughout the like ages or whatever, growing up, she would bring it up still, and so. But my sister has a boy now, and she is so obsessed with him, and basically goes, "That's my boy. That's my." And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's my sister's. It's you're the grandma. That's it." But she weirds me out with that. And I've watched. It makes me think about her because I watched an unsolved mystery case where a mom was like that and ended up killing the, the her daughter to get the boy, and said that she ran off with some boyfriend in some other state or whatever. Anyways, when I watched that one, I was just like, because it reminded me way too much of my mom. But uh, so we had that going on, and I was always a tomboy, and it might have been because of how she was so oh, you're a boy or whatever. But I also just remember when I was little, never liking wearing dresses. I hated wearing dresses. I hated having to wear them all the time. And I remember my mom, she got married again shortly after divorcing my dad, actually. Questions there. But I had to wear a stupid dress to their freaking wedding, and I hated every minute of it. I also hated the fact that they were getting married, so I had a lot of hate going on at an early age. um, and apparently, whenever my sister was born, I held her and stuff. There's photos of me holding her, but my mom claims I can only like go off of so much of what she says because later on in life I realized that there was a lot of lying. But anyway, she said that I asked, when are you gonna take the kid back? Like, when does it go back? Like, why is it still here? Kind of thing. I don't know. I think that I probably wasn't like that. I think I was. If I was like that, it was probably because I didn't want her to be neglected as much as I was, and I wanted her to be able to like have a better life than I was. Because I mean, at a young age, I just remembered like, yeah, I was probably a happy kid for the most part, but later on, I realized that it was mostly like because I was around my dad mostly. Because he was the one who watched us, like, way more. Like, yeah, he had to work, and my mom had to watch us while he was at work, but knowing now, because I got his side of the story. Growing up, I always had her side of the story. And she basically just made it seem like my dad was mentally ill and that he can't take care of us. When in reality, he was the one constantly having to take care of us. And she was absent physically, not mentally. Well, she was probably absent mentally too, but physically she was absent. And so, like, that's why when I get into, like I said, I kind of doing these for running for president type deal, and I want people to know how I am and who I am, so that way you know like my backstory and shit. And it's not gonna be questionable. It's transparent because like going through that makes me realize that the uh, DHS shit, foster care stuff, we all know it's corrupt. It's messed up. It separates families more than it tries helping them. Because, like I said, I was watching Unsolved Mysteries a lot, and I'm learning so much from it because of how effed up our government is. Because they tell a story on how the government or police, whatever, um, take care of a crime thing, whatever. And I mean, so many times DHS would like, I don't know if it was called DHS back then, but they would come in and be like, "Oh, you can't afford your children. We're taking them away from you." Instead of helping them, like, that's why whenever I become president, I want to make housing free, food free. We shouldn't have to pay for basic shit. Water coming from our faucet that is already filtered, and because it's filtered at the source and it's filtered coming through your home. Like, I bet you we have the technology to do that. Everyone should have clean water coming from their faucet, and it should be free. I'm not even gonna charge water bills and shit because bills are dumb and it's just to make money off of it. It's to make a profit off of it. When in reality, in order to survive and live and thrive, we need clean water. We need clean food. We need clean housing. I mean, some of the housing that they do get provided for is run down. It's not healthy. And I personally believe that if you're in an actual healthy environment, you can thrive. And I want to make it to where every fucking kid has that. So, like, to me, I think asking a kid, who do you want to stay with? Even at a young age, not until they get older and understand. I think even at a younger age, you can tell. Like, I remember feeling like I always enjoyed going to see my dad more than having to deal with my mom the whole time, because it was every other week. Um, and I remember also when we got older and we could go whenever we want, there was times where I would go every weekend to go see dad instead of staying home and dealing with her. And then most of the time she was off. The thing is she was off more trying to find her next man than she was taking care of us. That's literally what it was. And I think that's why she was constant. And plus, she had me at 22, so she was kind of young, but not as young as like teenage age. Like, it was 22 before she had me. Oh, and apparently she loves to tell me that I'm an accident and that I wasn't supposed to happen. So I wasn't supposed to happen, and I was supposed to be a boy. So two things right out of the womb, I'm a disappointment. And that lives with me for a very long time. Like, it really does. It's trauma. It is abuse to your child to make them feel unwanted and like a burden. Which she always made us feel that way. Like, I know for a fact that I don't, I hate asking for help. And the main reason why is because the person who I should have been able to ask for help was not there for me to ask for help whatsoever. So I literally had to deal with everything that was going on inside my brain and my emotions and shit on my own. course, like I had spirit guides that kind of probably helped me even at a young age, but I didn't know about it at that time. So to me, I was fucking alone. And my grandma, like, she was the person who let me be creative. She never forced us to, wear clothes that we didn't want to wear. She would buy the clothes that we wanted to wear. She'd buy the toys that we wanted, which I was not all about, like getting Barbie dolls and shit like that. So I was very, tomboy, as they call it. But in reality, it shouldn't be called that because toys don't have gender. Um, and I shouldn't have to be, judged by, oh, I don't like, I like to play with this toy, but not this toy. It's just stupid. Anyways, that's grooming. They sit there and try to tell us queer people that we're grooming them to be gay and all gay. No, we're just making sure that the ones who are gay know that we exist and that we're here to help them. Because the straight people, I mean, technically, two straight people birthed me. I still came out gay. Um, Even though it was two straight people. Although my mom is sometimes questionable, and that's my friends kind of have this theory that the reason why she hates the fact that I came out and was being gay and all that shit was because she chose not to. And because there are a lot of, like, I'm not gonna get into that, but there are like quite a few little I mean, she's never been super happy with guys, but I also feel like she's going after guys in a lonely way, like, oh, I have to have someone to validate me. And I remember like having a few boyfriends that we actually lived with for a little bit. And I remember them getting in a huge fight. And now I realize I think they were getting in a huge fight because they were calling her out on some shit. Like, my mom can put on this good front, like she's a nice person. And sometimes my friends who meet her, which most of my friends now have not even met her. I don't even talk about her really. Um, they'll meet my dad, but that's it. But the ones from high school who I'm still friends with, who have met my mom, can validate me saying that she likes to put on a good front at first, but if you actually stick around long enough, you see her other side, and you're like, oh yeah, she's not that nice. Um, she's not kind at all. uh, and so my friends from high school, which I have couple, three maybe that I've known since high school that we're still friends, and we can talk about it all damn day about how crazy and just toxic, narcissistic. That's what she is, and that's what most of my family is. But anyways, what am I even? I need divorce. Yeah, like I said, 4 years old. Oh, and then I was gonna talk about the childhood trauma of that. But then also, my mom got married to this guy that I really don't feel like they ever actually loved each other in that way. Maybe he did with her, but it was not her with anyways. That childhood trauma is stuff that I have not talked about a lot, and so let's see how well it goes in me actually saying this out loud. But he abused us. He beat us with a belt. I don't believe in hitting a child. You, even if you're smacking them on the hand, you are teaching them that it's okay to hit you as long as I'm hitting you, but you can't turn around and hit me. Like, that's the most dumbest shit ever. I can't stand people who still hit their kids. All you're doing is teaching them uh, that they can be hit by loved ones. That's all you're teaching. So later on, I know for a fact, later on in life, they will get with someone who's gonna hit them, and they're gonna be like, oh, well, that's just what people do when they love you. That's fucking dumb. That is showing you're being your child's first abuser when you're hitting them. Anyways, and he wasn't even my dad. He was my stupid stepdad. And my mom, I'm pretty sure, married him just because she knew he was going to get in some money. And I mean, even with knowing how my mom and dad got together now, I'm just like, yeah, that was not love whatsoever. I was born out of uh, loneliness and just dealing with, like, because I mean, like I said, she was constantly out doing whatever the hell she wanted while he sat at home and paid all the bills. And so, but he was the one who couldn't take care of us. Um, but anyway, so then she married this dude who was on Social Security, disability, and so he did not work. He had something wrong with his left arm. I remember his left arm being, he had to keep it shaved because even the hair on his arm, I don't know, made his arm feel like it was burning. I don't know what he had, but anyways, he couldn't work. Even though I'm pretty sure they met each other at a gas station working there, but they got married shortly after my parents got divorced, which is questionable. Um, but it was just because he could be a live-in babysitter. She actually kept a job, a work. That was when she actually kept a job. But I think it was just so she could be away from us. So she would work whatever the hell she wanted to work, and as much as she wanted to work. And he would be the one having to take us to school, bring us back home, and all that shit. And he was the one abusing us. And then now I realize that if my mom was around, he would make us sit in the corner, and that's how he would punish us. But in reality, he was beating us with a belt, and apparently my mom didn't know. But what happened was my sister got worse because she was younger and she was just acting more like a kid than I was because I had already grown up basically and didn't. I was walking on eggshells at a young age, and so walking on eggshells at a young age, I was trying to keep my sister out of trouble a lot of times too, especially with him. But sometimes I wasn't always there. But anyway, so she was of course not in school yet. But then once she was, hold on, I have to pause this for a second. The dog wanted, the doggy wanted out. Anyways, um, he scratched at the door. I had to let him out. But anyways, so what was I saying? Oh, so like my sister was not in school yet, so not telling what she went through. But I do remember, I don't know if she had stayed home from school or it was just before she got put into school, but she was supposed to be, see, I feel like she was supposed to be sick, but maybe not. It might have been before she was in school because um, I was at school, and so I didn't get to protect her whenever I was at school. But I remember having to go to the hospital because she had to get stitches in her head because he was punishing her. He probably beat her with a belt first and then put her in the corner next to a window. And it happened to be, um, I guess the sun was bearing in and it made her lightheaded or whatever. Anyway, so she like, I just remember hearing this story and I remember my grandma being super pissed. My grandma did not like him at all. And she had a good damn reason to. And that's why I know that grandma was the safe person because she didn't like this fucker. Um, and so, anyways, so she had to go run to the hospital because what happened was she passed out and there was a fireplace right behind her. And when she passed out, I guess she fell and hit her head on the corner of the fireplace. And I feel like he told on himself basically and was like, I thought she was faking it. And so he basically held her up and went to spank her and realized that she was actually limp, had passed out. And then that was whenever he, I guess, took her to the hospital. I don't think he called the ambulance or anything. He took her to the hospital and they had to put stitches in her head. So that was the abuse that we went through. No one questioned it then, or maybe some people did kind of question it. I don't know. But anyway, so later on, because I know he's still with us. Was still with us in first grade. So my sister wouldn't have been in school yet, and then she went into kindergarten, I think. And what had happened was, while I was, um, I guess that means I would have been in second grade. Ugh. Anyways, she started talking to. She was actually talking to one of her classmates as a kindergartner. Okay, a child, very young, learning how to talk. Was talking to one of the classmates, her probably a friend she was making, whatever, and was talking about what our stepdad did to us, and an adult was listening to her and reported it. And that was when I got called to the counselor's office and they were all like asking me like questions about like how he hugs us and all this kind of, it was crazy. And then it was also kind of a realization like, oh, so he's not supposed to be treating us like this. Like this is actually bad. And I just remember like, I remember going to the counselors and talking to them a lot, and then they finally sent me back to class. And I remember them giving me Scruff McGruff, you know, like the dog that was like take a bite out of crime, I guess. I think that's what his thing was. But anyways, I got to take the puppet because I think they used him as like a way to talk to me about stuff. I don't really remember it. I remember thinking I want to hang out with the puppet, and they were like, you want to take the puppet with you? And I was like, sure, why not? So I took it with me. But anyways, and then I remember going to, I guess what would be DHS or whatever, some other bigger counselor, whatever therapist thing, asking me same questions like, how does he hug you, da da da. And but my sister, I feel like what she talked about was some potential sexual abuse. I've blocked it out if there was. I just know that he beat me if I did something that he didn't like, and that was enough for me. I don't like, maybe there was more. It can't, because like I do remember. I mean, we're clearly old enough to like take our own baths and stuff, and I don't think he should have been the one taking us baths. Like he was he wasn't our father. He was a stepdad. He was whatever. And I remember also him telling me before he got kicked out. So like after this all exploded, they ended up separating, but they didn't get divorced. They stayed married because apparently somehow we got money from him, which I don't understand. I don't know if that means that he somehow adopted us, because I don't know, him not adopting us, I don't feel like, because he was on Social Security disability, so they're saying like, well, you're married. If you stay married, you can get money. My mom get X amount of money from him, and she would. I don't know how that went. It's a little questionable. I don't get it. But anyways, they stayed married, but he does have to leave, and we end up moving back to where my grandma lives, and but the thing is, it's like I don't remember the actual moving, and there's this weird kind of memory of like I might have got put into like foster care for a hot minute until she like figured out her shit, and like we had lived in a really nice house because of him or whatever. He had went back Social Security or something like that, and he got a decent amount of money, so he used that money to get into this house, and then we had to move out of that house, and we ended up moving back to where my grandma lives, so that way we'd be closer to her, which helped a lot because then she was the one watching us for the longest time while my mom went off and did whatever the hell she wanted. See, now my dogs are barking. Hold on. My dogs are barking, but I close the door and hope that kind of muffles it out. Just ignore them. It's probably the mail person coming by and dropping off mail, and they're barking at them. It'll stop eventually. But anyways, so that blows up. They end up, and I think the only reason why my mom separated from him was because, I mean, DHS got involved and she had to. But I personally think she should have gotten divorced, because later on I'll go into that because the fucker comes back. Anyways, so now we're living at grandma's or near grandma, and she's the one watching us. I remember like always we lived right next door to her. There was this trailer that was up for sale, and we got to live next door to her for a long time. So we just could walk across the yards to get to grandma's house, which is great. But now I realize that like I always thought that my mom was just gone because of work, and I'm sure some of it was because of work. But then there were some times where I feel like she should have been home with us, and she wasn't. So that was early childhood trauma. I don't know if I'm going to keep going into the other one, because this is like only 20 minutes long. I think I'm going to go ahead and do the other one. So like, talking about going from school to school, like I went to 9 different schools in the 12 years, I guess 13 years if you count kindergarten. 9 different schools, because my mom would just up and leave. I mean, we never knew why we were moving. We moved one time in the middle of the semester, and by 9th grade, we moved I went from junior high to high school, because 9th grade in where my grandma lived was 8th, 9th, and it was junior high, and then 10th, 11th, 12th was high school. But then when I moved to the hick town that I hated, it was all high schoolers, so it was like kind of these are some tall ass 9th graders, but then I realized that they're actually like 10, 11, 12th graders there too, because it was a smaller school. But anyways, so not going to different schools did not help my social deal. I know, I mean, I always made friends, but I think after a while I kind of just was, especially when I went to high school, when she made me do that last move, the reason why was because grandma passed away. So whenever I was 14, she passed away October, the month of her birthday. And then when we finished out that semester, and then during the winter break, we were forced to move because she just for some reason didn't want to be in that town anymore because it reminded her of her mom. And I'm like, shouldn't that be why you want to stay? Plus, also, we never got to ask like what did we want. We were never asked what we wanted, if we wanted to move or not. Which I didn't want to move. I wanted to stay there because I had a decent amount of friends. I didn't want to have to try to make new friends and shit. But that being said, I was just gonna kind of talk about how I went to 9 different schools, and there was some times where I feel like the teachers got a little bit questionable. Because I mean, she neglected us. I mean, we were basically. I mean, I basically was raising my sister and myself because she was around. My sister like learned how to cook real early because she liked cooking, but now she's getting back into cooking, but there for a while she didn't like it because basically once she learned how to cook, my mom just forced her to cook all the time. Well, good, you can cook for yourself then. I don't have to do that for you either. um, Living through childhood as a burden sucks. um, but that was, I feel like that's a good part of the that section of, I have them like little outlines of what I was going to talk about, and I feel like that's a good chunk of it. So, um, another thing, my mom was verbally abusive because verbal abuse to me is a lot of the times. I'm not saying physical abuse is not bad; it is very bad, but verbal abuse and mental abuse is worse in a sense because you can't take photos of that unless you just happen to record them. Of course, this was like 90s, like we didn't have great recording devices. We couldn't just take out our phone and be like, yeah, go ahead, say what you want to say, mom. I'll get your abuse on, on camera. Um, you have to have that in order for mental abuse and verbal abuse to even be uh, validated in court, which I think is stupid. And that's why it's worse the physical abuse, because physical abuse, you can technically take photos of the bruises after it's been done to like show like, hey, this is what so and so did to this kid, whatever. Which I think that's effed up too, don't get me wrong, like physical abuse is not okay, but because the courts don't even recognize mental abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse as an abuse. Like, oh, well, your mom's just being strict. And I'm like, no. Making fun of your child for wanting to actually eat vegetables, because I'm pretty sure I'm a vegan now. If I knew what that was as a kid and was allowed to be that, I probably would have already been it. Because even as a child, I remember hating eating meat. I hated it. Um, Especially steak. I hated eating steak. The gristle. If I did eat bacon, that like my grandma would always cook it fairly crispy, where like it didn't move, like it didn't flop. Like all that gristle was just so disgusting to me. And so basically, I wanted to eat burnt bacon in order to eat it because I didn't want to have to feel the texture of the gristle. And like steak is very gristly, and so like if I did get a steak, you better believe I was sitting there cutting off all the gristle, and then my mom would just always be like, "You're not gonna eat that?" I'm like, "No, but you can, because I know you love it. So go on, eat my fatty shit." Um, but I could only eat like parts of it that didn't have that gristle because it was so, to me, it was disgusting. It was probably a texture thing, but I also just don't, because when I moved out of my mom's house and I was actually buying groceries for myself, I noticed that I didn't buy meat a lot at all. Like I didn't think to buy it except for like maybe some tilapia, which now I'm like, apparently that's not even, of course I'm a vegan now, so I don't even eat fish. But um And I would go to more like chicken and stuff, but it wasn't like, it can't be that on the bone shit because more likely there's gonna be gristle on it, and I just can't stand the gristle. It's gross. But anyways, but I remember going to like Western Sizzling or Ryan's or something, and it was a buffet. So like I love being able to go there because I could actually pick what I wanted to eat, and I'd always get like a salad, and then I would get more vegetables and like mashed potatoes and fried okra and shit. I always get like a bunch of sides, and my mom would make fun of me for doing that. But then my grandma, because I would always get like broccoli and cauliflower, and my mom never bought me broccoli and cauliflower at the house. I would didn't even think to ask her to like, can we get some broccoli about? Because like she made me feel like I couldn't ask the simplest questions of, could I get this so that way I can eat something other than what y'all guys are eating, you know? Because it was literally with her, eat what I feed you or you starve. And I think that is abuse. And if your parents are doing that, that's abuse. I don't care if they're like, why do you gotta be so picky? Probably because, you know, some of the food that, like Hamburger Helper, I grew up with that shit, and I can't even stand looking at it now because it's just disgusting. It's some weird ass processed noodle shit that you put some powdery shit in, and you mix meat in with it, and it's not even healthy for you. So like I think that was the biggest thing, is like I wanted to eat stuff that was actually potentially more healthy than what, you know, eating out of a box was, you know. But I didn't have that uh like even now living with my dad, he goes, "No, get what you actually want to eat." And that's just so weird to me. I'm like, what do I actually want to eat? Like I'm still figuring that out. My eating disorder has been really bad, so like that's what I'm working on now is my eating disorder. I know why I have an eating disorder, and it's because of my mother making fun of me. But that was what I was gonna say. So she made fun of me for eating broccoli and cauliflower, because I don't know, 'cause she's mean. But my grandma was there whenever she did it, and so my grandma like basically nipped her in the butt and was like, "What the hell are you doing? Don't say that. Vegetables are good for you to eat." That's why I hate commercials who purposely put in there like, oh, we shouldn't eat our vegetables, or oh, let's do this to trick your kid. You never had to trick me into eating vegetables. I wanted to eat them, but couldn't have access to it. Like, what the hell? But then I see these commercials always like making kids think, oh, vegetables are bad, you shouldn't eat them. Those commercials are fucked up. Like, that's so bullshit. And I'm not saying that there are some vegetables that, like, I used to not like tomatoes, but I love tomatoes now. I love buying the little small tomatoes, and eating them. But whenever I was younger, like, I didn't really like them because I guess I didn't like the texture. I don't really know why, but I definitely ate some ketchup, and now I don't eat ketchup, but I eat tomatoes. um, but anyways, so my grandma was there, and she talked. Sorry, I got a little off the thing, but my grandma goes. She told me, she goes, cauliflower is like eating brain food. So cauliflower kind of looks like a brain, and she was saying that like, oh, it'll make you, you know, smart basically. Which, I mean, I feel like there could be some truth to that, because I think eating healthy vegetables of all kinds is, you know, good for you. But then she said that broccoli, because it was like more on a stalk, you know, it'll make you tall. And so that's why I was like all about eating broccoli and cauliflower, because I wanted to be smart and I wanted to be tall. um, but that was just another indication of how like my grandma would see my mom bullying me, and so she would say something that like hopefully counteract what she said. But I will say, after she passed away, dude, I forgot about all that shit. Because after she passed away, it was bad. Because all I had to deal with was my mom, and I didn't like it. But even though I was still trying to please her, that's the thing. You can't please toxic people because they're toxic. They don't care. Like, she does not care. If she actually truly loved me, she would not have ever treated me in that way. Um, Tough love is a lie. If someone is just verbally being abusive and they call it tough love, they're fucking lying to you. Don't believe that shit, because tough love is just abusive love. It's a love with conditions and shit like that. And I know that some people are like, well, what about people with drug addictions? Even I guarantee you, if you're part of a family, or if you're in with a family and you're a drug addict, more likely you're a drug addict because of that family. So that's why I said in the intro, like, finding your chosen friends, find those people that actually get you and actually want to help you heal, not just add to your trauma. Um, Forget those people. And they are probably going to be family. And I know a lot, and that's another thing. For generations, we've been told to, well, that's family. You just have to deal with it. And it's total bogus bullshit. To break that toxic cycle is to walk away from them. Um, so looking like whenever I was going through a lot of shit during the pandemic, and dude, I was stoned out of my ass, and then it was the only reason why I could keep going, because if I wasn't stoned, I was just miserable. But being stoned helped me process the shit that I wasn't allowed to process back then. So like healing your inner child, if you see a lot of those videos, don't make fun of that shit, because healing your inner child is part of healing, and it's going to look different to anyone and everyone, because I'm doing some shit that I wasn't allowed to do as a kid, because basically I wasn't allowed to be a kid. I needed to take care of my sister. I needed to take care of myself, because I didn't have a parent who actually was taking care of us, who would actually get us gifts. Now, the only reason why we had toys was because of my father. And my mom would bitch at him so much. Why you always gotta buy them toys every time you see them? Well, probably because he only gets to see us every other weekend, and that's if we actually got to see him. Because I'm pretty sure there was a lot of times where she was so far away, or didn't want to meet him halfway, or blah blah blah, and made it to where we couldn't see him. Because there was time where she moved far away, and I think now that I know more about courts and stuff, I feel like there should have been it shouldn't have been okay, because I know there's like a mileage thing where you have to like stay close enough to the other person so that way they can see each other and shit, or see their kids. And I feel like there was some times where she wasn't that very close and wasn't that very okay with meeting halfway, at least to like so we can see him. So like, yeah, he's gonna buy us gifts every time, and he does it for his grandkid now. And she'll bitch at that. I have to see her sometimes because she'll be at my sister's house, but I just kind of like wall. And she wasn't even supposed to be there in the first place. She was supposed to stay out, but that's just her. She don't care about boundaries. Um, but my dad gets my nephew gifts all the time, because that's just how he is. He sees something, he thinks of his nephew or his grandson, my nephew, his grandson, and he's gonna get it. We would ask for toys and stuff, and I remember even his family making him feel bad about getting us toys all the time. But like, in reality, they should just let it, because it was it was the only way we could get toys, for one. Because my mom didn't buy us stuff like that. So he knew that she wouldn't buy us stuff like that, so he would buy us stuff, kind of deal. Same with my grandma. My grandma did that shit too. She was the one who got a little, not like a tree house. It wasn't a tree, but like one of those little deals, and we would always play like pirates and shit on there. Um, but my mom never did that. She never stayed in a house long enough to do that. So like, she gets mad at everyone else who does that for us, and it's mostly because she's not doing it. That's, dude, when people target other people's shit, it's more likely it's because they're not doing it and they have guilt. Or they don't even have guilt, and that's why they get mad, because they're like, oh, why do you gotta do that? You're making me look bad, is basically what she was worried about. And honestly, I think that's the reason why she kept us for, like, there was times where I thought, like, why don't you just put up for adoption, or give us to her dad? He clearly wants us. You don't, but I never actually verbalized that to her, because I was walking on eggshells at a very young age. But but that's my early childhood abuse. Uh, Being around negative, narcissistic people all the time. It sucks to be an empath and around those people, because you think you're the crazy one because everyone around you is like this, but in reality, they're the crazy ones and they're the toxic ones, and you're the one who shows empathy and shows kindness and shit, and it does suck to be surrounded by that. Um, and I hope that anyone and everyone finds a way out of that type of living. And that's why, as a president, I want to be able to. The court system will be for the children, not the adults. The court system will look at both parents and see, okay, who's verbally abusing their child right here in the court. Because I guarantee you they're verbally abusing the child in the courtroom. But you have to look at it as that. We've been taught that obsessive, jealousy, control freak is a healthy parent, but in reality, the one who actually tries to listen to the kid and talks to the kid, that's who should be the one who gets to raise the kid. Because control freak, you can't control your children, period, the end. You need to work with them, not, make them work for you. You need to work with them, regulate, you have to be able to regulate your own damn emotions in order to help a kid regulate their emotions. If you can't do that for yourself, your kid's not going to know how to do it because you don't know how to do it and you can't teach them. And that's what the court system should be looking at. How does this person, treat this kid? How is this, which parent does the kid actually want to go and hang out with more? Kids do know who they want to be around because they feel safer with one parent, and maybe they don't feel safe with either parents, and that's what the court needs to be able to see too. It shouldn't be about just separating the family right off the bat. It should be about doing family therapy, and then that way they can tell, okay, well, the father is actually being a control freak and is abusing the mom, and that way when you see that in counseling and therapy, even therapy and counseling needs to change a little bit, because I feel like they always want to put, yep, that's all on you, but in reality we should be letting that person no, 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 what that person did to you was horrible and you shouldn't have gone through that. And that's how it should be more. I feel like some people are like, well, that's just why you got anxiety. You got anxiety because you're still around those fuckers. Get away from them. I just want to be a voice for every child who has not had someone be the voice for them, because I was one of those children. I had someone who might be the voice for me and kind of tell me some things that actually resonates with me. I'm like, oh wow, it's not how it always is. But they were so temporary in my life. Because I remember later on talking to a counselor, and it was probably because of what I've gone through. And the teacher's probably seen that I needed to talk to someone. And I remember her telling me that it's okay not to want to eat beef. I remember her telling me that vividly and going, it's okay that you don't want to eat meat. And I'm like, can you tell that to my mom? Because she doesn't believe that, So yeah, you have these temporary people in your life that tell you, yeah, this is okay. But whenever you're having to live with this, it's not okay. You're not going to believe those people who are temporary, So finding those people who can be a little bit more, that's why consistency, I feel like, should be very important in anybody's life. Even if you're an adult dealing with what you've dealt with as a kid, and because you couldn't deal with it back then. But anyways, I'm going to end this video now because I'm just rambling, I feel like, and it's getting a little longer. But that was my start off in childhood, being neglected, not having a voice, walking on eggshells my whole life. But anyways, so peace within. I'll see you in the next video.